This is part 5 in this YouTube series where I am working to convert this RPG game into this pseudo 3D racing game. In the last episode, I added a sound effect and some music to the pause screen. The focus of this episode will be 3 more scenes, a splash screen, a title screen, and a game over screen. Since we are writing a game in Go using Ebitengine, we can pay some respect to the author of this amazing library. The Ebitengine repo contains pre-made splash screen images, which we will borrow for this tutorial. There are various sizes and they come with a black or white background. I added 2 of these images to my Assets Images third-party directory. I am going to create a third-party.go file here to embed these assets. Using the Go embed syntax, I will add both of these assets to a variable with an appropriate name. I am copying the startScene.go file and renaming it to splashscene.go since it is mostly boilerplate, and it will be easy to modify. A quick search and replace gets this scene in compliance with the scene interface. The splash scene needs a few new fields. First, it will have a slice of images, which will be any of the third-party images we want to display. Then, we need 2 fields, which will be used for creating the fade-in effect. In the new scene constructor, I will set the fade-in time to be 4 seconds, which feels about right. Then, the update method can increment this by 0.1 seconds each tick. My init method for the scene will load all the images we want as part of the splash scene. For now, this has just 1 image, but could have others. It could be used to display logos of technologies your game uses or sponsors. I just create a new Ebit10 image from the raw bytes and append it to the slice of images. Next, I will set up this scene's draw method. I will first break it out into its own file. I create a new splash scene draw.go file and move the draw method to it. This method will have some logic in it, so it will be helpful to have it in its own file. I will loop through the images I created in the scene's init method. I first need to check the scaling factor since the images may be different sizes. I get the bounds of the image, and then divide the screen dimensions by the image dimensions to get the scaling factor. I calculate the smaller of the 2 to maintain the aspect ratio. Then I scale the image to the screen size using the geomatrix. To center the image, I calculate the center of the screen by subtracting the image width and height times the scale factor from the screen width and height, and then dividing by 2. The last step is a little complex, but essentially, we want to calculate the alpha value for the fade-in effect. The alpha value is a number between 0 and 1, which is used to determine how transparent the image is. To determine the alpha value, I take the current elapsed time and divide it by the fade-in time. An alpha value of 0 is completely transparent and 1 is completely opaque. So I add in a clamping mechanism to make sure the alpha value is always between 0 and 1. I will use the color M package and scale the alpha value by calculated value to get the correct current transparency level. Finally, we can draw the image to the screen. Now that the scene itself is done, how do you actually add a new scene to the game? First, we need a new scene ID in scenes.go. We also need to call the new scene constructor in game.go. Since the splash screen is now the first scene, I will set that as the active scene ID. This change will not be needed for the other scenes, but a new game needs to know the first scene to start with. Now, I can run the game and the splash screen will be visible. You may notice the text from that image is a bit distorted. Scaling down large raster images to smaller sizes can cause this. There are different filtering options available in Ebitengine, so it may be worth experimenting with those. In this case, even if I use a smaller image, the text is still distorted. Since the current resolution is only 320 by 240, using a much smaller image would be ideal. I will note that this splash screen has very few elements. There is a simple geometric logo and some text. Ebitengine can both create vector shapes and draw text to the screen, so it would not take much to create a simple splash screen without any images at all. In fact, there is an example function in the Ebitengine repo for doing just that, which I have modified slightly but left it commented out. Feel free to experiment with this if you want. The next scene I want to create is the title screen. This will reiterate how to create a new scene. I often do exercises like this to find inefficiencies in my code. Finding all of the steps needed to perform this task, adding a scene, in this case can highlight areas where I can improve my code. After copying an existing file, renaming, and doing a search and replace for the new scene type, I can make changes specific to this scene. I do not need the fade in time, but I will keep the elapsed time field since I will use it to animate the title screen. I do not need to load those splash images, so I can remove this initialization code. The title screen should go with the game screen when pressing enter, so I can adjust that and leave the default as the title scene itself. I will need to do some different drawing for this scene, so I copy an existing file and clear it out. I know my title screen will eventually have some buttons and other things, so I want to start by keeping the draw method as a keeper of the logic. So I made a new method that will draw the title screen and keep its code isolated. Since this episode will be too long with all the fancy things my example title screen had, I will just keep it simple for now and draw the title text. I set my text to draw, create draw options, align the text to the center, and translate to the center of the screen. I need a new scene ID for the scene, and I need to call the new scene constructor in game.go. Now if I run it, I will see the title screen and pressing enter will take me to the game screen. If I repeat the pattern one more time, I can create a game over screen. Create a new scene ID, call the new scene constructor, create the new scene file, and make any scene-specific changes needed. In this instance, I want to draw game over on the screen to prove that the scene transitions are working. I also want the player to be able to restart from the title screen, so pressing R will allow them to do that. For this demo, I also need to be able to trigger a game over from the game scene. So in GameScene.go, I will add code to let the player trigger a game over by pressing T. If I run the game now, I can press enter to skip the splash screen, as well as the title screen. I can still pause and unpause. I can press T to trigger a game over, and R to restart the game back at the title screen. Since this episode ended up longer than I expected, I will stop here. In the next episode, I will add some more polish to the title screen and game over screen.